Jason, hi, welcome.
Hey, David, how are you?
Very well, yes. I've been joking that I've got my little fireside in the background, so this is a real fireside chat, as it were.
It looks beautiful. It looks
We're,
beautiful back there.
we're talking cross-Atlantic here today, so you're in Philadelphia in the center of the US election turmoil, and I'm in sleepy
Yes.
Reading in lockdown again. So.
I think I refer to it as ground zero right here outside of
That's right.
Philadelphia.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So as we said, this probably won't be going out for a few weeks. We've got some quite important announcements to kind of talk about, and some really exciting things to happen between GCS and RDK. But so we're in the midpoint between the election happening, aren't we, and someone deciding who the president's going to be. So we don't know this yet. We will know it when this goes live. So it's quite exciting. If we're kind of time stamped by what we're talking about here, Jason, aren't we? But,
So I won't make any statements to jinx things one way or another.
No, that's right. Yeah, we'd be apolitical in this situation.
Correct.
But be interesting to see when we look back on this. But so, guys, it's great to have you here today on the podcast and kind of YouTube. I've got Jason Briggs with me today. He's the general manager of RDK Management. And as you know, when I usually kind of introduce myself, GCS being a technology recruiter, GCS Connect being our community, where we really connect expert talent to innovative companies. We're really pleased and proud to kind of announce today that GCS is becoming a member of the global RDK community, of which Jason is a senior member and founder. And we'll talk more in this podcast about the RDK product. But what we're trying to do here is combine the RDK product with GCS's background in the broadcast and telecommunication industry, and to really build the kind of central network of talent in this industry. The idea being that we can provide together a source of talented, the best accredited engineers in this industry for the companies and partners that are implementing this technology and expanding this world. And for me, Jason is the best person to speak to about this ever expanding RDK world. And we're going to talk more about this and more about how the partnership works and more about how the community works. But Jason is the general manager of RDK Management. By way of background to that, RDK Management is a joint venture between some of the leading global telecoms and broadcast operators. And it was formed to manage the RDK software as a global open source project. So really interesting, really innovative, just the sort of things we like to talk to about on the GCS Connect Leaders series. Jason himself oversees the core strategic operations, marketing and product activities for RDK Management. And I hope you won't mind me saying, I mean, RDK really is growing now to be one of the most successful open source software projects in the communication service provider industry, but also, you could argue, one of the most successful open source software projects anywhere in any industry. So, we'll talk more about how you've done that. We'll talk more about how open source and this community and collaborative development works. But it's really, really exciting to speak to you today, Jason. And it's really, really exciting to kind of be involved as GCS with you kind of going forward. And we'll talk more about how that partnership can help and how people can get involved with this community going forward. But from your side, Jason, I mean, I think it's really important for maybe myself and some of the guys that listen to the Leaders series or watch the Leaders series that aren't in the telecommunications and broadcast industry. So what is RDK and how do you position it within the industry that you work?
Good overall intro question. So first of all, really thrilled to be here. So thanks for having me. Yeah. So RDK is, as we describe, a software platform for video and broadband devices. Like you said, it's in the broadcast industry. It's also in the telecommunications industry. And essentially, if you break it down, it's a Linux-based operating system that we've developed very efficiently for both video and broadband devices. Sure. So when I say video devices, you think of things like hybrid set-top boxes, IP video, traditional video, IP streaming boxes, OTT streaming boxes. It can really, the software can be adaptable to any of those environments on a video set-top box. And then conversely, on the broadband side, it runs on DOCSIS gateways, so if you will, Wi-Fi gateways that operators would deploy with their customers. It's also now expanding to run on DSL gateways, so your telecommunications providers, if you will, as well as the big thing is GPON. Everyone's, whether you're come from the broadcast side or the traditional cable side, or whether you come from a telco side, everyone's converging on the broadband into GPON. So that's a very big area for us. So we have, just in terms of scale, we have about 60 million, over 60 million devices running the RDK today, 15 countries globally. And we view these companies that are running it as some of the largest and most innovative broadcast and telecommunications providers in the world. And not only are they running it, but they're also coming back and working with us to make the RDK a better product for everyone.
And that's where that whole kind of collaborative open source element, so you kind of bring more parties in, they develop it and really add to the product stack, I guess, and then create different types of technology that can move into different areas.
That's right. That's right. We depend on the community. We're very codependent. So when people have new ideas, we want them to actually create them, not just talk about them, but create the software and work with us to bring that software into the RDK. So we RDK have a limited development staff where we can help develop where it makes sense. But in large part, we are driven on contributions, and this is a constant thing for us. Is we look for contributions back to the code base to make the code better. You know, from bug fixes to major new components like a browser. All contributions to us are great. So we really are fed on these contributions into the code base to make then in turn make this code base better for everyone. But it's a very common open source methodology.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's been used in lots of different industries and kind of areas. Would you say within this particular industry, it's quite groundbreaking? It hasn't been used so much, and generally people have worked on a proprietary product.
It's a good question. I feel like within our industry, we're maybe some of the message bearers of open source, of why it's a good thing. And so a lot of times we're communicating what open source is, how to best work with it, why it's actually good for your company. So yeah, there's a lot of adjustments, and depending on which company you're coming from, some large operators will understand it and say, yeah, we've got it, and others are getting their arms around open source. So we're helping them to at least educate them on why it really matters to the company.
So it's not just for one type of customer. It's not like, it's not for one maker of set-top boxes. It's for a range of different customers and has a range of different uses, I guess. So there's even almost like different types of RDK.
It's developed on purpose very, very generically. So the example I'll give you is more on the broadband side. We started initially with RDK broadband on DOCSIS cable-based gateways. Yep. And it's done phenomenally successful there. And we worked with the silicon providers and the OEMs pretty closely to then make the RDK their default stack. So when you order a device from Technicolor, let's say, it comes with RDK shipped on it. And if you don't want RDK, I would argue why you wouldn't want it, but you have to actually do, I don't know, I don't understand it, but if you don't want it, there's actually work to get it off. And so, so that's been very, very successful. But if you take that generic broadband stack and you move it to a GPON gateway, there's very little rework that has to be done to the core RDK software stack. Okay. The real work is really when you move to GPON, you're just moving to a new silicon set. And so the real work is really the porting of the RDK onto that new silicon set. It's not a rewrite of the RDK. It's very much a lift and shift, if you will, of the product. And it was designed that way on purpose.
And so therefore customers, innovators can, because they don't have to develop a new platform, they can actually think about how does this work for the user? How does this work for the viewer, the listener, the person actually interacting, and innovate around that, I guess.
That's our hope. Our hope is really, can you take your development teams and staff off of redeveloping things that have already been developed? And can you move that staff to developing a new user experience or a better way of interacting with your customer or a way of differentiating your product from your competition? That's really what we want to do, is to get although we love people to work in the core RDK, we also love people that just take it as is and build on top of it. So build that customer experience on top of it. And I think it's when you kind of when you shift your resources to really focusing on the product and the customer, that's where you start seeing a lot more value out of the RDK combined with the efforts you're doing on top of it.
Yeah, and we see that quite a lot, within our own industry. There's processes that you can automate, you can use again, you can make much more efficient, and then what you're able then to do is focus a lot more on the customer and what they want and how they can work. And I think in this particular environment at the moment, people are running in a lot more lean way, aren't they? They're trying to do things quicker, they're trying to get things out there, be more competitive. And this is obviously a product stack that can help them to do this in this industry.
Yeah, it is. We're having operators come to us and saying, look, we've tried the custom software route. We've tried building our own stack.
Yep.
We've tried the proprietary. We'll license a stack from someone. And the way they see the world working, or at least going from a technology perspective, is we need to pick an open platform to align with and get ourselves and our engineers aligned with that platform and use that. And that's kind of the trend we've absolutely been seeing the last 2 or 3 years. I'd like to say we were part of helping to drive that trend. There are obviously others out there as well, but that really has been an industry trend, and it's definitely a trend that we're seeing with the customer base coming to us saying, look, it's too onerous, it's too expensive to build and maintain our own custom platform. It's inefficient, and like I said, we have to maintain engineers on that platform instead of moving those engineers up to the upper side of the platform to develop UX.
And obviously with all technology, resource, and we'll talk about this more because obviously that's part of the key thing of the GCS RDK partnership. But if you're an engineer listening to this with a Linux or a DevOps or an embedded background, why would they want to get involved in RDK?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with the so with any engineer, from what we see, the engineers like to get involved with projects that are bigger than just their company. So if you look at the projects, the technologies they want to get involved with, they like to get involved with, for instance, WebKit. They want to understand WebKit. They want to understand GStreamer. They're attracted to these major open source projects because they know that when they get up to speed and they understand them, their skill sets then become more portable and they become obviously more marketable. And so that's really with the RDK why there's a lot of an appeal. And we've actually seen this within our industry where you have someone that has launched RDK with one operator, has left and has been hired by another operator because of their knowledge, talent, the ability to make it successful, and then they bring it up there. So this kind of talent with software is very, very it's really interrelated, and so that's really we don't lead initially with the technology saying this is about talent, but at the underlying part it really is. You need the right engineers to understand the right software. The only way you're going to attract those engineers is if you have not a custom platform but an open platform that they can then, if they haven't used it before, they can get their skill sets dangerous on it, and then they become very marketable.
Yeah, that's right. And also I think there is that element like you spoke about, they talk a lot about mission in a company, and doing something. And I do think with engineers as well, it's, this whole idea of open source, that you're collaborating and building something, like you just said, bigger than yourself, bigger than your company to really push technology forward, aren't you? You're doing those kind of code switches, you're doing those kind of bug fixes, and that's helping the whole community, right?
That's right. That's right. So this little incremental effort that you're doing is actually making a big impact on the community. And then within your company, because you're an expert on it, that community is then bringing in, major changes from hundreds of companies back to you. So then you can represent back to your company. Yeah, we made a lot of great contributions to this project, which is fantastic. But at the same time, we're benefiting, maybe we made 3 or 4 contributions, but we're getting hundreds of contributions back within the next release of the software that, by the way, we can all benefit from. And I know, for example, we may be working on this feature. Guess what? It's been done. And so you get that kind of magnifying effect of what open source can provide back into the into the project. And that's that's exactly what's happening with RDK. We bring in, I think, around 10,000 improvements every single year back into the RDK. So you can passively use them and get the benefit from them coming back, or you can contribute to them. Either way, there's tremendous excitement and value around using the platform.
And is there someone somewhere, Jason, I mean, you're not going to tell me who it is, but is there someone somewhere that is your like number one, the person that fixes the most? Do you know who that person is?
Oh gosh, yeah.
You don't have to tell, obviously you're not going to tell me who they are, but I just think
I can't tell you who they are
yeah.
because I think I'd make another 50 people angry. So I can't.
Yeah,
do
yes,
that.
right. Yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of league table somewhere where they're like, "Oh, I'm going to beat this person. I'm going to be the best person." And obviously, you're one of the founders. You're one of the guys that have really driven this community and this software. What were the key business challenges as a leader, more as a founder, that you were trying to overcome when you started to develop this?
Yeah, so I think at the time we were really just solving a problem. So that was it. Did we have aspirations for a global software project with tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of devices at the time? No, we did. We had a core problem we were solving, and it just so happened that RDK and open source would solve it. And the problem we were solving was twofold. One, it was a broadcaster telecommunications provider problem, and that problem was that they had a number of different software platforms on a number of different devices, and they were spending their time making changes and fixes to one device, and then going to the next vendor and saying, okay, we need to make the same change to your device, even though it's a little bit different, and then to the third vendor and doing that over and over again. And this was slowing everything down. And they were spending more and more resources and time with these companies to fix the same thing that could have been fixed once, let's say through RDK, and then propagated to all these devices. So this inefficient development is really very, very, it was very traditional at the time. The platforms that the operators were taking really came from the OEMs themselves, and so it was just really slowing down development. When we started the biggest problem was getting a guide, a new UX guide release out. And it was taking companies anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get the next version of a guide out, which if you look back, if you think about that now, it's just mind blowing how you could even operate without an ability to nimbly update your guide and user experience and branding to your customers. So these were, the guide example is really a downstream impact of the lack of the ability to innovate. And that's what we were solving. So we were solving that for the operators. And then on the technology company side that would service the operators, you had, as much as operators would love to blame the OEMs were raising their hands saying, hey guys, can you guys all agree on one software platform, please?
Yeah.
Because we have 5 or 6 engineering teams dedicated to each and every operator and their software platform. And it's absolutely, we can do it, but you want to drive the cost of your CPE down. You ask us how we can do that. And the best way to do that is to become more efficient on our software platform, And so it was this constant cycle. So we like to say the RDK is really developed by operators for operators, but it also is developed for tech companies as well. And then the other example on the tech company side is we had an issue where you would have an innovative new application company. Let's say it has something really, really, really cool that would absolutely revolutionize something in the user experience with customers. The problem they had is that if they walked into, pick an operator and said, hey, here's our application, here's our slides, here's the ROI, it's really amazing. The next thing they would be requested is, okay, go do a proof of concept with this OEM, that one, and come back to us when you're done. And that process basically killed this innovation that these great companies had, where now what we're seeing is companies pre-integrate to the RDK, and then they have a proof of concept, not slideware, they have a proof of concept they can show operators. So this kind of speed of innovation is really, that was the problem we were trying to solve with these tech companies, and it's really being solved today. So we've got some amazing, what I call amazing app vendors, not on the video side, but I always tout the broadband side where people don't think of applications so much, but we have companies like Cujo and Beagle who actually develop these innovative new methodologies to secure your Wi-Fi network, to provide parental controls over Wi-Fi. All of these great things would never have been possible in the past had we sent them down the road to port their platform to, port their product to 15 platforms.
And I guess it also allows kind of new entrants to the market, because obviously there's, you can drive innovation without having billions of pounds of R&D spend. You can kind of get in there and create yourself as a startup or as a new business.
Right. As an operator, you then can you can choose, if you've got an innovative startup that maybe you want to acquire, well, you can actually try it out and acquire them and go it. So it's overused concept of ecosystem is really important to us. We want to cultivate a great ecosystem of companies that can build on, around, beside the RDK, integrate with it, and develop great business models on top of it, and hopefully at the end of the day provide more innovation into our entire broadcast and telecommunication space.
Fantastic. And thinking about the industry itself and thinking about obviously what we're kind of going through at the moment in terms of the pandemic and that sort of thing. As an open source community, what I'm quite interested in knowing is, well, actually kind of spin it back a little bit. Firstly, I would assume, and maybe you've got stats and data, in telecommunications and the broadcast industry, in these industries, they're quite prevalent on people being at home using the internet, watching content, devouring content. Have you seen like an increase? We're talking to people in your community. Have you seen an increase like from March onwards? Would you say that people are using the products more, or is this?
Yeah, so we don't take a lot of insight into the operator products being used. That's between the operators and their customers. The anecdotes that are coming back, I think, to us is that broadband is now, it was an essential service. Now it's almost a pure lifeline service if you've got a job, and so you got to have it. But broadband is one aspect of it. And someone has used this concept that was actually brilliant, that the broadband service providers are no longer broadband service providers. They're actually Wi-Fi service providers. Wi-Fi is the product. And so they assume you can get a great broadband connection to the home, and you can get a solid downstream, upstream rate to the gateway. But then how do you manage that distribution of devices in the home? And that, I think, is really what more and more companies in the broadband space specifically are looking to do. How can they make it the best Wi-Fi experience for the customer? Because if you can do that, you can hang on to the broadband customer and you can differentiate from your competition.
Yes, and that's obviously another thing where RDK comes in, that you can really kind of drive innovation, how this runs on particular kind of platforms, and then you don't get the bloody Wi-Fi. Now, I don't know what the US, that was a slight swearing. It's usually not that level of swearing in my house when the Wi-Fi goes down.
I think bloody on the side of the pond is totally fine. No
that's
problem
right.
yeah.
Yes, I think usually my anger rises and my daughter's anger rises when it's not working. And I think we all understand that, and we've all seen that, and it's become this kind of lifeline and how important it is. But for you in your community, therefore, so it's become more of a, you're providing a really, really important life service now, and innovating around that as opposed to maybe a luxury as it might seem 6 months ago. How has this affected the community? You're a leader within this community. Do you find it easier to run an open source community now, or is it harder? What are the positive and negative elements coming out of that?
Yeah, I always look at these I have different stats boards we look at to just kind of measure where we are with the community, or we, kind of in community engagement. And I come down to really two key ones. There are probably more than two, but there are two ones that I really like to look at. And I look at every month, how many people download the code. So how many downloads do we get every single month? And that's a metric of engagement to me. And then conversely, so if that's the download, how many times do people upstream back to us? So commits or new improvements to the RDK. So that kind of circle process is the way that I look at the community. And looking back in 2020, as you would expect, in around the March, April timeframe, I saw those metrics running pretty smooth going up. I saw a drop, and you would expect that. It was everyone was trying to figure out what was going on and things along that line. But within the RDK community, we have what you call a V recovery. People are talking about these different recoveries. We've had a V recovery in this. So it's really dropped, it's come back up, and it continues to go straight up. So just as a reference point, right, I think it was last month, we had around 8 million downloads of the RDK in a month. We like to keep it above 5 million. We would get a little worried that something was going on, take a look at something, but it's actually keeps, if you will, chugging ahead. And we're on pace this year to maintain our we're actually going to be better than last year, but we're maintaining above 10,000 contributions, like I said, or improvements that have come back this year. So it's been a blip and a back up again. But at the end of the day, if you're using the code and depending on the code that we provide, you still have customers, you still have code updates to give to the customers. So that doesn't stop. And customers, like you said, especially those on the broadband side trying to service their broadband gateways, they still depend on the updates and changes and everything that we provide back to the community. So that never has really, in our minds, has never stopped. The last point on this too is we're maybe a little bit different than some businesses in that we've always operated in this virtual environment. We don't have, because it's open source, we don't have, everyone in the RDK community is not here in Philadelphia. It's distributed globally. And so, the tools like Slack, tools we're using like now Zoom, all of these things are really how our community has communicated for years and years and years. So that communication and that really didn't skip a beat for us.
Yeah, so you were able to kind of continue on, which is where I think quite a lot of the dip was coming from, for particularly in the IT, is like how do we hire people, how do we work on a project, how do we communicate? And that's what we found from a lot of our clients. And in terms of bringing talent in, I don't know how I'm going to interview people. Well, there is ways, but we have to work through that. So moving on to the kind of the talent side of things, obviously this is where GCS becomes involved with RDK, and hopefully a way we can really help the community. What challenges have you found that the community has had in finding the right talent for their projects? Because obviously the idea of the software and innovation, the collaboration is great, but you need people at the moment, unless you find robots, to implement that. So what has those problems, those challenges been?
Yeah, I would say the talent, I'll call it opportunity, that we've had in the community is it's probably at the top of our list right now. Every year we try to pick a few challenges or opportunities to solve, and I think the talent challenge in our instance is probably one of our top 5 challenges as an RDK community.
Sure.
And that's not specific to us. I think everyone is starved for very good talent, so we're no different. So I think the relationship that we're striking together with GCS and RDK is very mutually beneficial. We have customers that when they, you almost have to look at the engagement cycle for the RDK. So we have customers that say, okay, I want to go RDK. We go, great. What do we do? And he said, well, pick up the phone and call CommScope, let's say, and order some devices, and it'll be shipped to the RDK. I'm like, wow, that's great, perfect. And they're like, but what if we want to manage this ourselves? What if we want to, we've seen what some of the big operators are doing. What can we do to kind of get some more control over those software, over the software images that are on our devices? What can we do to better understand the platform and innovate on top of the platform? And that's really where the market has a need for good talented engineers that understand the RDK. I think at the base layer, it's a Linux platform. So I think getting Linux engineers, I think you can find them, but there's also you also need engineers that don't understand Linux, but understand our RDK platform. So we're always training people, and typically our training is after the fact, meaning, hey, I've gone RDK, I've hired some engineers, can you please train them for me so they can get up to speed? And that's one way of doing it. But I think the way that that's interesting, and again, as we evolve and how we interact, is really this opportunity of creating more outward facing training courses, if you call micro certificates, so that you can get engineers that can actually learn the RDK, understand how it works basically, and then become kind of pre-credited, if you will, and go to the market. So getting some sort of staffing pool, I think is really, really important, because again, the question I get every single day is, where can I get more talented RDK engineers? It's the number one question, and we want to make sure we can address it.
And it goes back to the thing you were saying about having a platform that you can then build your own kind of customer innovations on. So it's the same thing for me. The way this works is, if I can have a really great accredited set of engineers that I know can be delivered, I haven't got to spend my time looking for that great set of accredited engineers who have really good project experience, and then I can work on innovations for my customers and for my users, right? It's
right.
That's another element that the user, the operator, shouldn't have to worry about too much.
Right, and I think related to that is a time to market scenario. So typically when you say, I want to go, you represent to management, hey, we're going to go, and they go, they give you a time frame on it, and typically you say, oh, it's going to take us 6 months to get it out the door, and manager will go, not soon enough, I think you can do it in 3. And you don't debate them, you just have to say yes, sir, and move on. And so I think that's then the next question is, oh my gosh, now what do I do? How do I find, how do I ramp up quickly? How do I find my engineers?
That's right.
And so I think that time to market scenario is also very, very critical, because I think once with the management example is one, but there's also just an exuberance example where you're just really excited and want to get going fast. You want to prove to people that you can move fast. And the only way to do that is with talented people kind of there soon after day one to get things going.
And you get the skills transfer as well, don't you? This is generally how people learn things. There's a few people that kind of come in with those skill sets, and then there's maybe some people more junior, people with less, not these exact skill sets, who work alongside them, and then that's how they pick up this, and that's how it kind of runs through. Like you were saying, people can be within the business and they're working alongside a gold standard RDK accredited engineer who's done all of the tests and really knows his or her stuff. And that means that washes off, doesn't it? I'm sure we've all learned in that way in the past by working alongside someone that really knows what they're doing, right?
Yeah, I have a funny young engineer story, if you allow me the time. So yeah, we're RDK. We also hire as well. So we're also looking for really good talent always. And it was funny. I talked to a colleague in the industry, and I said, hey, we're just kind of networking around, but we're looking for, a younger engineer and, start up to do X, Y, and Z, and, hopefully good on their feet, good communicator, because we communicate out to the industry. And he just pauses and he nods and he goes, yeah, if you find one, let me know.
Yeah.
Send to me.
I'm not going to tell you about him. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
He or she is all mine. So yes.
Exactly. I go, well, you can't blame me for trying. So it's that anyway. I think the talent is super important.
And I think that's where as well the benefits of RDK could maybe founder in some ways on not having the right levels of talent in great, because like you said, people can get very excited about these things. I was talking a conversation about RPA and automation the other day, and I was reading an article how people really buy into automation, but then when they come to it, they haven't got anyone that can actually build an RPA piece of software. So everyone sells the big dream, but they can't actually deliver. So it makes the actual software not really work. And maybe you've got some stories of that where they haven't had the manpower in order to deliver the innovation.
Yeah, it's I don't have as good of a story I have with the young engineer, but it's it's definitely, I think the thing that I've learned based on how I've built my staff and built RDK is that this is slow and incremental, and so you need to go find really good people and hire very strategically and get the right person in. And always have a talent board, always have a list of people that you always, in a dream scenario, if I could ever have that person on my team, I would go. And so that kind of one at a time, hire one, get one, hire next one, hire the next one really slow. That has, you know, in the early days when we had very little people, it was pretty hard. It was very entrepreneurial, had to do a lot of different things. But after you kind of take a step back and take a look at like the team you have, and every single person that you had to go fight for and bring in, it's super rewarding. But it takes a long time to build that. It's not an overnight thing. There's situations where I've seen where companies say, you know, operators say, okay, this new initiative, like you say, the automation initiative, we're absolutely going to do that. And someone stands up and says, I can do it. And then they go, great. You know, what do you need? And I say, well, I need, you know, $20 million. I'm like, whoa, okay. Okay, could you do it for 18? Yeah, I can do it for 18. Okay, great. We need it next year and go. And most of that 18 is you got to go find a talent pool.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to go find engineers. And what I've seen, you could never hire, at some point, you can only hire so many great engineers or great talented people in a limited time set. And so those things typically, you know, have a great, you know, we call it the shiny object syndrome, the great shiny object syndrome, where everything's great off the bat and everyone's excited because this person has a lot of money to spend on a lot of different areas of the project, and then they just crash and burn. And they hit the wall and fail to meet expectations, or they have a great demo, but they can't scale. So they didn't think about scaling the platform. They thought about making something that would be demonstratable to management quickly. And then it hits the wall and falls. So I've seen all of those things. My advice is always to go slow. Hire very strategically, very, very thoughtfully, and don't overpromise that, hey, if you give me $50 million, I can build you the best thing in next year. It's just, anyone that promises that, I think I'd have to scratch my head and say, I don't believe you can actually deliver on that.
That whole iterative way of moving forward. And I think from my side at GCS, like what we would like to bring to this whole partnership is, number one, obviously a core network of talent. So these are people that are accredited. These are people that know the product. These are people who have worked on certain projects that are available in a certain type of way, in a certain type of location. And, you know, let's be honest, in a kind of remote world, it's easier to find people on a global basis. So these people are based here, but they can all kind of work together. And that helps you to do it. But the other thing that I think is really useful that we can work on together is, this is really good examples of how it's been rolled out. And this is when you've hired, you should hire this person first, and then maybe this person, and actually this person works really well with this person. And this is a great way of putting that team together, you know, because it's obviously creating that team is, you know, the personalities and how people work together is just as important.
Totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I think, you know, that concept of building a team slowly but meaningfully, so they actually work together, probably gets overlooked. People go and hire superstars and then try to mash them together, and then you get ego conflicts and a whole variety of things. So
you can't have a team of quarterbacks, to use a
to use an American term. You can only play one quarterback.
That's right. That's right. Now, you know, obviously there's always move forwards in RDK, and there's always kind of major releases. We went to the European Summit last week, which is really interesting. Really great virtual event, you know, one of the best virtual events I've been. So I was talking to yourself and your community guy there. It's a wonderful event, but obviously that's more. There's a major press release coming out about RDK 4. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Obviously that's the newest iteration, the newest innovation, and what you feel it's going to really kind of, how it's going to matter for the business and for the community.
Yeah. We recently released a press release. We actually released RDK 4. It's for the video side of the business. Okay. And we released it on September 30th, exactly, 2020. So I know the date because I saw it go out the door, shipped out the door. That's right. We're really excited by it. And so the way I think of RDK 4, it's an architecture. It's a real re-architecture of the video product, video platform for RDK video. And we designed this essentially with applications in mind. So if you will, we designed the platform from the apps down. And in the video space, if you will, the streaming space, it's really all of the major streaming applications and the ability to develop apps on top of the platform. those are the things that really matter for the video, for the kind of video side of the product.
And for so a layperson there,
yeah,
we're talking about Netflix, Amazon Prime. Is that what we're talking about here? Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Right, okay,
yeah. It's literally any single video project we have. The first question is, where, you know, how do we do pre-integrations of these major streaming apps?
Sure.
And so, and in the past, we've obviously, you know, we knew they were there. They've been raising an industry. It's an interesting story. In the past, the operators really have never, you know, they kind of viewed them as the competition, or they were you know, helpful to the business. And so they've kind of went off and did their own implementations of these streaming apps by themselves. As they've learned, it's hard, just like anything else, it's hard to integrate one of these apps to a platform and then maintain that as time goes on. And you know, essentially that's what RDK4 helps to do. We're engaging and developing these pre-integrations for the major streaming apps, so that if you want to take the RDK platform and our common integrations, that's really what RDK4 is about. It's to simplify that pre-integration so that, I wouldn't say all of the hard work is done, but the vast majority of the hard work is done, because it's essentially the same problem we've seen in the past, where everyone's trying to solve that same integration problem 100 different ways. And they've got all these bespoke implementations out there, and guess what? They're really hard to maintain over time. So we're working very hard to create these pre-integrations. The RDK4 platform is the first step of this, to create this common layer for them to essentially integrate to. And I think if you look at and follow the RDK over the next year or so, you're going to see more and more of these pre-integrations pop up. And we'll talk to the marketplace. I won't say exactly which ones, but you probably know all of the major names we're talking to. So that, I think, is the one major aspect of RDK4. And then the secondary aspect is, within RDK4, we released a new app development language. It is JavaScript based. It does run in the browser, the RDK browser, really well. It's called Lightning. And Lightning is designed essentially to provide, if you will, a native app experience, but in the browser. So it's designed for lightweight devices. It's designed for low-end devices. And so it's going to create that same premium application experience and feel on a very low-end set-top box, because typically the resources you have available to you on these set-top boxes aren't as great as, you know, say a smartphone.
So I was going to thinking about that. It starts to feel like you're trying to create the same sort of experience as you might get from an iPhone, for instance.
Correct. Correct.
And there's no reason why you couldn't have that. It's just that we don't expect it, is it? We expect a certain thing with our smartphone, but we don't expect that from a set-top box, do we?
Well, yeah, the set-top box, it just doesn't have the horsepower that you have in an iPhone. iPhone just has immense more, and so as an application developer, it can be relatively easy development app for an iPhone, because you don't have to worry about the device itself. But on the operator side, the broadcaster side, you actually have to develop with the device in mind. And so this is really the reason we created this language, this Lightning app development language, to create these the same great user experience you would see, you know, on these major devices, iPhones, on a set-top box. That's our goal with the platform. So those, I think, between Lightning and app-focused development, that's really, in a nutshell, what RDK4 is.
And that can obviously go forward. I mean, there's so many different devices in the home now and abroad. Like, you think about IoT, you think about, you know, the home management, the Alexas, kind of Google Assistants, that sort of thing. You kind of move into that sort of area, don't you, where you get different types of services running on those?
Yeah, we can. And our problem is really staying focused, because you could take, for instance, you could take the RDK4 and you could run it on, what's that?
Put it on a car.
You can, well, I was about to say that. You can absolutely can put that in a car. And you know, so and for us, they said, well, are you chasing the car manufacturers? And we said, well, no, but that doesn't mean, as a community member, if you wanted to take RDK4 and go approach BMW or Mercedes or or any of those to say, here's a platform I can run for your car. RDK would be the underpinnings of that platform and would work just fine. At the end of the day, it's really apps running on a platform on a screen, and that's what RDK4 does anyway. So go ahead and take it. It's open source and free, and see what happens. So
yeah,
we have only so many limited cycles in a day to go chase opportunities. Right, yeah. And I think our plates are full with the opportunities that we have right now. So
you've already talked about slow and incremental there, Jason. So that's
correct.
That's as a leader, that seems to be what you're driving and doing it very successfully. I mean, you talk now about Lightning, so obviously that links it into more of an application development level, which is very, very exciting for everyone, I think, and talking about the talent and people getting involved in the industry, because it takes more to a software level, I guess, which is also exciting. I would hope that people listening to this, obviously either their talent or companies or people that are interested in the industry, would come out of this thinking, oh, how do I get involved with RDK? How do I get involved in the community? What's the best way for them to do that? How do they do that?
Yeah, so if you're a developer or just in generally interested, I would just say go to the website. It gives you lots of great links and ways to get started. It's RDK Central, rdkcentral.com.
Sure.
And it can branch you in a number of different directions. The second way is if you're an operator and you're interested in the RDK, there are a whole host of silicon OEM companies that are very, very familiar with the platform. So people like CommScope and people like Technicolor and people like Kaon Media. On the silicon side, we work with a host. Broadcom is perhaps one of the biggest players in RDK space. So you can go ask any of these, and they can get you up to speed on the platform, and kind of get you going really, really quickly.
That's really exciting. And from the GCS side, obviously we're going to have as part of the partnership a full area of our website dedicated to this, and that what we'll be producing is collateral and events around GCS Connect, but alongside you guys in terms of this is the type of talent, this is how to find the talent, this is the sort of rate cards of the talent that you might need, and this is the best places to look for the talent. And we're really, really excited by driving that partnership. You've obviously mentioned the difficulty sometimes of finding the talent and find the right level of engineers. We know it's going to be a really interesting kind of collaboration with yourself and with the other partners in order to really make RDK an even bigger success than it already is, and providing the people to do that. So yeah, please visit the GCS website as well as the RDK and the other kind of companies you just mentioned. We will put links on there when we post it out, so that you can kind of follow it through. But I'd like to say, Jason, it's been a really, really interesting chat. I really am excited, one, to find out what you guys are doing and how you guys are pushing forward in industry. But secondly, I think for anyone that's listening as a leader, the last question I've got for you is, when you were sat there developing this and doing this challenge as the leader, did you think this is what you were going to do, or how did you go from I'm just going to solve this problem to now I have this kind of global open source community?
Honestly, I didn't have the aspirations at the time that this would go that far, because I think if you were to tell people at the time we're going to take it to that level, they wouldn't believe you. It just, honestly, they wouldn't believe you. And so the way I've seen it grow, so I came with very humble expectations of how we did this, and really how it's grown over time, and what I've seen is that we simply look for the top 3 to 5 challenges we have to solve for our industry, for our community, every single year, and you solve them. You don't just talk about them, you actually solve them. And so every single year we're picking a list and saying, hey, these are the challenges that we've heard back from the community. We are absolutely going to solve these challenges. And so, for instance, this year, which is why this was very interesting to us, is we have a challenge with talent. So we need to solve that talent challenge this year. We're also very, very advanced. But as time went on, as we started solving challenges, this thing slowly grew. and it slowly grew some more. And as we just started checking things off the list, it just kept growing. And at some point, someone, you know, we only had the video platform to begin with. And at some point we said, hey, we should get a broadband platform. And it was just based on the fact that the company saw us running a video platform successfully in the open source. They go, you know what, this is going to happen to the broadband market too. So here, take our platform. So we actually had 3 or 4 companies offering us their software to open source for free. So, and so then that created the broadband segment of what we had. So all of this has just been this kind of, you know, very steady step development of you know, understanding what your customer and market's problems are. And it's not just understanding them, but you actually have to do something about them. There are a lot of people that really are very good at PowerPoint and have these great you know, visions. But if you spend more on the vision side and less on the did we actually deliver side, I don't think you could make it to where we've made it so far. I know I don't think we would make it there. It's really pick them, deliver, and then pick your next challenges, deliver, and keep going. So that's really how we've grown.
And I think that's really key, because when you talk sometimes about leadership, and to kind of bring this back to the series, sometimes people talk about the vision, the big vision, like we're going to be here and we're going to be the world's biggest open source broadcast software. But if you start off saying, right, so what are the couple of challenges we need to fix first, and one of the next challenges and the next challenges, then that vision will come alongside it. And I think that's a really good lesson for everyone, really. And we're really excited to be part of that vision there, Jason. So I will give you a vision. So
Perfect. And I'm excited to learn from you, because I'll also say too, along the way, I've learned from people. So when you, the beauty of open source is when you open source, you get a lot of people coming back and giving you information, feedback, opinions. Hey, you should probably do things a little bit differently. You guys actually approached us and said, look, have you thought about talent, and have you thought about talent strategically? And you gave us actually some really good ideas. And so that's probably the other area of it, is you've got to listen. Chances are you don't have all of the answers. And so you've got to be able to listen to people and actually react. So I'm really excited by the partnership.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. We look forward to working together, and have a great day. Thank you.
All right. You as well. Take care.